6 decades of investigative reporting and award-winning journalist Dan Rather is still at it. He continues to tackle big stories. Tonight brings the premiere of Dan Rather Presents Unwanted in America, the shameful side of international adoption. And we're glad to welcome him today. Dan, good morning.
Good morning, Mary. Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure to see you. What did you learn as you investigated international adoption?
You know, Mary, I was very surprised at this story. Most adoptions, international adoptions and otherwise, go at least reasonably well, but there's an underside to these international adoptions that has developed. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of internationally adopted children are being brought to this country, and then their adoptive parents decide they didn't want them, so they put them on the internet, and there's no supervision, there's no regulation on the internet. What you have, children advertised, does anybody want this child on the internet? This is outrageous. And one of the difficulties are that more than 50% of the children now adopted from overseas are more than 3 years old. And older children adopted either in this country or overseas present some unique challenges. The children frequently have experienced trauma, so it's difficult with parents. Now again, some parents adjust to it, some don't. But our story is about this business of advertising children on the internet, which I find totally, absolutely outrageous. Making these children is called, quote, dehomed. There's no meaningful federal regulation. In most states, there's little or no regulation. And this is a real problem, and it's not being addressed in any substantial way.
What do you think should be done about it to fix it?
Well, first of all, there needs to be some meaningful federal oversight. If that takes legislation, then so be it. But keep in mind that these children, as soon as they are adopted from a place, say, such as Ethiopia, maybe a 10-year-old Ethiopian child, they become an American citizen. So there's nothing illegal about them being, quote, rehomed on the internet. But what we need is some sort of transparency and some sort of regulation. I mean, we don't want to be the kind of country that brings children from other places and then when it doesn't work out with their adoptive parents, just throw them, if you will, to the wolves or who else is on the internet. So what needs to be done, there needs to be, first of all, some states have laws that you cannot advertise children to rehome them on the internet, but very few states have that. If your state doesn't have it, that's one thing that needs to be done. The second thing is the federal government needs to step in here. I know a lot of people say, well, you don't want the federal government into things, but things like adoptive children, we just can't be bringing children to this country and putting them on the internet and allowing any and everybody to take them. We're not that kind of country. We're not that kind of people.
I want to get your thoughts on something else, Dan, before we run out of time here, and that's Michael Brown's death and what's happening in Ferguson and cities across the country. A lot of people are asking this question of what's next? How do we continue the conversation and make it meaningful? What's your answer to that?
Well, this is a very serious problem in the country, of course, and has been since our country started. The question of how do we reach racial harmony? I think one thing is a lot better education. I know people say, oh, come on, Dan, not education. We start educating our children to look at the quality of a person's character rather than the color of their skin, as Dr. Martin Luther King said. That's one thing we can do. The second thing, we need to have a really meaningful dialogue about what we can do that many in the minority communities, and not just those of African American persuasion, have lost trust in our law enforcement. We can argue about whether they should have or not, whether it's justified or not. We need to have a real candid conversation among ourselves about how to rebuild trust between law enforcement and many of the minority communities. I think we can start with those two things.
Dan, I appreciate your opinion on that, and so that our viewers can catch it tonight. Dan Rather presents Unwanted in America, the shameful side of international adoption. Premieres at 7 on AXS-TV. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mike.